So we're going to talk a little bit about changing times and changing trends in recreation. And I'm going to start you out real quickly just as an overview, thinking about Jamestown to Teddy Roosevelt in about 60 seconds. Because I want you to really think about how recreation reflects society and how the opportunities that we offer to reflect society and influence society are our responsibility and our goals and challenges here. Think about Jamestown and also think about the Puritans coming about at the same point in time, but the Puritans coming for an entirely different reason as Jamestown did. You know, the Puritans came for religious freedom. Recreation was not seen as a big deal. As a matter of fact, it was kind of frowned upon. Whereas in Jamestown, that came for, you know, a money-making industry, that they really were into the recreation components and everything. I use these two places because I want you to really think about that even though we make all these generalities about recreation and all of the people doing recreation, that even from town to town it can differ as far as what we need to offer as opportunities for those particular societies. While I was looking for some numbers and everything, I ran across a really interesting study, which I hate to admit was done through Texas A&M. It really gave us some good numbers to work with, and their quote here started out with, in 2011, outdoor recreation among Americans reached the highest participation level in the last 5 years. This is really good news for us, okay? Nearly 50% of all Americans ages 6 and older, or 141.1 million individuals, participated in at least one outdoor activity in 2011. Speaking to the choir here, we all know that we want them to participate much more than one activity for 50%, but we also know that we have to provide those opportunities for them as well as maintain the areas so that they can participate in these opportunities. Now, what the study also said was that it went up by 1%, basically. That, you know, by 1% per year, we're getting more participation outdoors. But it's not in some of the traditional ways that we've seen in the past. We have been basically a hook and bullet society for many, many years because, once again, recreation reflects what we do, and it was often a utilitarian piece that was in there, and so that meant hunting and fishing and providing for the family and honing those skills that were associated with that. We're seeing a little different activities listed through this study. But the first thing to look at right here is looking at our demographics here. We're seeing, like in 2007, African American at 8%, and at 2011, 7%. Okay, now we're looking at youth here, which is actually very much our target market these days, more than adults, and trying to get youth outdoors. We're seeing that where that went down, Hispanic went up by 1%. And I mention this particularly here because in Texas, as you know, we're about 40% Hispanic right now. By 2030, we should be 50% Hispanic. So it's very much a target group that we need to look at. The numbers still are very low. 76% for Caucasian, white, non-Hispanic. That's still pretty traditional. If you look in, you know, whether it's public lands, private lands, any sort of public lands, we're still predominantly an older white guy participation in those areas. Now, you know, as you know, in Texas, we have 94% is private property, so, you know, the challenges are even greater there. The numbers are not changing as much. Now, when you look at African American at 2010 versus 2011, that probably means that we threw more money at it for 2009 and 2010. You know, to get those groups to participate. We're seeing a switch now where we're throwing more money at the Hispanic population and trying to do that because that is the fastest growing population that we want to involve in this. All right, now from this study, it also talked about that the most popular youth activities, and this is 6 to 24 again, were running and jogging and trail running, bicycling, camping, fishing, and hiking. And even then, you look at that's a very small percentage for each one of those. These actually kind of surprised me a little bit when I was looking at these, and they might you as well. Also think about whether you think these reflect Texas or not, okay? Because remember, this is a national study. They did phone interviews with about 38,000 people and applied it to the rest. Okay, now even though they had the most popular youth activities, they asked what their favorite activities were, and this was a little different scale where it said running, bicycling, skateboarding, triathlon. That was really, I was like, okay. Bird watching, I would have thought that one was a little further up because that's really become a great area for focus right now. If you look at the adults, which are 25 plus, over 25, fishing, running, camping, bicycling, and hiking. Notice in all of these the absence of hunting, which we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, the favorite adult outdoor activities from there were running, bicycling, triathlon, bird watching, and skateboarding. So it somewhat reflects what the youth said as well, which is not unexpected, because we expect the youth to first of all reflect the parents and the group which they run. It's not that unusual, but like I said, it's a little bit different than what we would expect to see in Texas. This is like urban Texas. Now, I did pull the hunting piece out of there just so that you could see that it's showing, for those who are participating in activities, even though it didn't make the top ones, seeing an increase in the last 5 years by about 24% for bow hunting, increase in handgun by 7%, rifle 14.5%, and shotgun negative 0.6%. So this is some of the movement over the last 5 years as far as increase and decrease. My wonderful map, it went well with the, a little fuzzy, but it went well with the color scheme. Okay, now the reason that I have this up here is because I want us to really think about where we are and what we're looking at in this area, East Texas, and how it's so different from the rest of the state. I'm sure most of y'all have come across Interstate 10 at the bottom of the state, and what do you see? You see a sign that says El Paso, 878 miles, right? When you think about what Texas has to offer as far as different regions, different cultures, because once again, think about Jamestown, the Puritans coming in, as far as being very different. And some of the studies that we've done on the eastern part were even very different here. We did a couple of bear stakeholder studies, and when you look at down here, you have Houston, you have the urban, you have coastal, you have people along that line. So you have mostly, not necessarily upper class, but a little bit more educated. They usually have a little bit more money. They're a little bit more mobile. Whereas when you get up in this area, you get more people who are not so mobile. You get people who are third and fourth generation in that area. So they're thinking very differently from those that are considered upwardly mobile in Houston. So the ideas between the two of them are very different. So they're going to be looking for different opportunities, just like with the ATV part, where you were talking about the third generation, there becomes a generational and family type thing. These are the same types of things you're going to see in recreation for us in the state of Texas. One of the things we really need to do, we need to do a study that looks at what is East Texas saying about what they do for recreation. Because even though we pull, for instance, this study, the Forest Service ladies were here earlier, and we're doing a visitor use monitoring for them that looks at recreation participation in the forest, and we did that for Texas and for Louisiana. We're seeing upwardly use and some different types of uses and everything. But from all the studies that I've looked at, and that we're doing, we're still not quite getting at where we need to understand what's out there, what they want, and so the opportunities that we can provide for them. And just like each one of us represents a different group or agency in here, we all have kind of a different agenda. We have to look at how we can work together to get each other to work together, and look at everybody else's agenda as well, and how we can piece together with that. There have been some great mentions of some partnerships in here this morning. It's really great to hear that. Texas now and in the future. So think about the changing demographics in the state. We have an aging society. We also have, once again, we are currently 40% Hispanic and moving rapidly towards 50%. So we have to think about what we need to offer that changing demographic in order to meet the needs of them. Then we also have an aging system of recreation, and then think about the Forest Service properties out there. They basically are historic. They're over 50 years old now. We can say, historic preservation. We had all of that money in the 60s and 70s that we threw at recreation. And we still are just as guilty of doing that now, where we throw money and putting it on the ground, but then we don't have any maintenance money after that to continue to maintain it in a way that it needs to. So then we get on the other side of it, and either it becomes a dangerous area or an area that we basically need to decommission, and that's what we're seeing a lot of now. Despite the fact that we are really pushing the Richard Louv bit, saying get more youth outside and more families outside and all of that, we're not throwing enough money at it to make it happen in a way that really increases those opportunities and makes them valuable experiences in a way that it could be. We're not putting our money where our mouth is. Also thinking about different societies, about every 10 years as the generations start flipping a little bit, society starts to reflect different values, different things that are going on, different cool stuff. One of the big discussions right now is whether how much software and how much social media do we put in the parks to that outside experience. And if you don't put any in there and you don't allow it, then are we disengaging that whole youth generation that lives off of social media? So we have to figure out what we want to do to help reflect the different society going on. Different opportunities, we have to look at that as well, and that kind of rolls into new site constructions or maintenance, because when you think about the changing demographics, most of our sites, you think about camping sites in the Forest Service and all of that, they've been made so that they're single family sites. They've been designed, we design them so that they have that private experience out in the woods, so you have bushes around them and everything like that. Hispanic populations usually travel with an extended family. You're talking about 30 to 50 people that might want to go camping. A single family unit that says, limited amount of people, limited amount of vehicles and all of that does not meet the same needs. Also, there's more picnicking and hiking and bird watching and non-consumptive type of activities that are going on. So what we provide as opportunities have to fit that. And on top of that, we not only have to provide the opportunities, we have to protect our resources too, so that there'll be future use. So those are all considerations that have to be thought about. How do we want to provide this opportunity? How do we want to maintain this area or build this area to meet the needs of the current population? And the next, with the new site constructions or maintenance, once again, that we need to take into consideration all of these things that are going on within our society. We need to ask for more money to do this, and I know everybody in this room has been going up the food chain asking for money, trying to help with this, but I encourage you to continue working towards that job. Don't get discouraged. And then the last but not least, because I always like to end with something that's hopeful. Here I've kind of painted this picture of it could be doom and gloom unless we get money thrown at us. I always like to end with something hopeful, and so shaping society. Everybody in here is responsible for shaping society to enjoy the outdoors, to respect the environment, to become stewards of our natural resources, as well as users of our natural resources in a stewardship type of way. As we try to shape society, then we have to take these things into consideration. And also, think about how little I mentioned hunting in here and how little I mentioned fishing. And you think about the Pittman-Robertson Act and what we need, where that money comes from. And so we've seen this as a trend over the last 20 years where it's really been a falling hunting population and all of that. Now, if we need that money, and we know we do, and we want to maintain this type of experience, and most of us do, and because this type of experience reflects East Texas more than what that national study did, then we need to continue to work out there to really try to bring youth into that experience and the family experience, provide the opportunities of, you were talking about unique opportunities at private land, to try to continue to offer those types of things. But like I said, everybody in here has the opportunity to help shape society to those pieces that you want as new opportunities and as old opportunities that are part of our culture and history.